Music for All is proud to sponsor Bandstand. At Music for All, we're about providing positively life-changing experiences. Join us with your marching band at Bands of America or with your concert ensemble at the Music for All National Festival. Students can audition for our honor ensembles or attend camp at the Music for All Summer Symposium, featuring the Sweetwater Director Academy, an amazing week of professional development for directors led by Dr. Nola Jones. Learn more at musicforall.org.
Romeo Music is the leader in audio, video, music, and lighting technology for educators. With a combined nearly 200 years of experience, Romeo Music's subject matter experts understand the struggles that face teachers in today's music classrooms. With a laser focus on educational technology, Romeo Music provides a turnkey solution, everything from audio cables to on-site training. To learn more, visit www.romeomusic.net.
Hello, and welcome to Bandstand, the official podcast of the Tennessee Bandmasters Association. I'm your host, David Aydelott, and I hope you'll join us on a journey through the past, present, and future of bands in Tennessee. We'll delve into the rich history of Tennessee bands, uncovering the hidden gems and legendary figures who shaped the state's band landscape. We'll survey the present, where you'll meet the movers and shakers of today, gaining insights from their expertise and experiences. And we'll gaze towards the future, exploring the exciting possibilities that await Tennessee's school bands. On today's episode, I speak with Atticus Hensley. Atticus is the new Fine Arts Manager at the Tennessee Department of Education. We speak about his background, his role at TDOE, his vision, and his advice to young teachers and teachers who work in challenging situations. I hope you enjoy this episode with Atticus Hensley. Well, hello, everybody. I'm here today with Atticus Hensley. Atticus is a longtime friend for a lot of us, and he's now the Fine Arts Manager for the Tennessee Department of Education. And he's going to be on here today and maybe periodically throughout the year to talk about things that are going on at the state and how that affects teachers. So, Atticus, welcome to Bandstand.
Thank you very much.
So let's just start with you. Let's start with your story. Let's hear how you got here, and then we'll go into what your job is now after that.
Wow. I did not want to be a band director. After 3 years of music ed at UTK, I was just personally sort of, dissatisfied with what I was doing, somewhat disillusioned, and just I wanted to do something else. And so I spent like a week as an accounting major. That wasn't good. you know how you do
week,
when you're,
huh?
yeah, I made it a whole week, and kind of settled on performance because, at the core of everything, I love to play. Euphonium is my main axe, and that's where my love is. And then, even though I had been warned that there's more jobs for United States senators than there are for euphonium players, I soldiered on, and over the course of time, got to be pretty good, but nowhere near good enough to do that gig. And then along the way, I got married to a wonderful woman by the name of Caroline, who is still teaching here in Middle Tennessee. And she kind of made me grow up a little bit. I had to figure out my life, had to figure out my world. And ended up teaching privately. I mean, that's where you and I met, when I was teaching privately at Overton. I would taught at Riverdale, Oakland. Just every day I was driving out of my driveway going a different direction, and one of those directions was Tullahoma, and that was in 1995 that I started teaching privately down there. It seemed like every couple of weeks I'd go down there, and Steve and Mary would be like, "Hey, we got a couple more kids. The trumpet teacher, he's got another gig, so can you take over the trumpet studio for a little while?" Mm-hmm. By a little while, they meant forever. And I did that for about 13 years and taught alongside them in their sixth grade classes. And what I learned right then was that the reason I'd become disillusioned is I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really didn't understand what could be done in a classroom. And what they were doing was absolutely amazing. And I wanted to do it. I wanted to be just like them. And that's what I did for 2 decades or more. I went back and got my certification. It was the 7th and 8th grade band director for Tullahoma for 13 years. And along the way, discovered that I also had this passion for lifting up the people around me. I thoroughly enjoy being able to identify a problem and start searching for solutions. And for me, that I always feel like that's kind of self-serving. Oh, more money for my band or whatever it might be. I can get this kid in my band room, whatever that is. But when another teacher comes to you and says, I'm having trouble with X, that feeling of satisfaction you can get from having even helped them just a little bit is amazing. Mm-hmm. So I worked my way into leadership there in Tullahoma, where I was their fine arts coordinator for 6 years, along, all the while also being a band director, which is a hard row to hoe. And I know a lot of people listening to this have done that gig. It's not easy. It can be rewarding, but it's not easy. And then when this position came open with Tennessee Department of Education, I thought, why not? Let's try this at a different level. And I'm super excited about it. Still learning about what the possibilities are, and looking forward to maybe doing some good things, not just for our band folks, but for all arts teachers in the state of Tennessee.
When did you start officially?
My start date was July 15. So okay. I'm still, I can no longer count the number of days on my fingers and toes. But I'm still very new. I haven't completed all of my trainings yet. So
yeah,
lots to learn.
You're still a baby, but you're going to be great. Can we go back further?
Oh,
let's talk about Atticus and his first day in band.
Okay. This is where, if any former student of mine actually hears this, they'll know that I lied. They'll know that I lied to them. Because I always felt like it was really important to be able to, communicate with my middle school students, that, hey, middle school band is hard. We all, we've all had experiences where, that first day of 6th grade or whatever is really hard. And the truth is, I never had that. Where I grew up in East Tennessee, Washington County, there was just sort of Band-Aid coverage at the elementary schools as far as, having a band director there. It was basically one band director for, I don't know, 5 or 6 schools. And that man worked his rear end off, and, he would try to recruit. And I always just managed to duck him. I was just like, no, I'm not getting involved with that. I was very much a non-joiner and still am to a certain extent. So I put it off and put it off and put it off. And towards the end of my 8th grade year, I was taking guitar lessons. And I had a bunch of friends who were already in band. And they were like, hey, I hear at the high school there's a jazz band, and you ought to see if you can be in the jazz band playing guitar.
Ooh.
And so the high school band director would come by my school once a week to teach his once a week band class.
That sounds familiar right now.
Yeah. What is old is new again.
Increasingly familiar. Yeah.
And he would talk to me. He'd catch me in the hall and say, hey, so-and-so says you want to be in band. Yeah. Well, what do you want to play? I was like, well, I want to play guitar. Well, you can do that, but you need to play something else too. Oh, well, I've got an uncle who has a flute. Maybe I can do that. And then a week later, I've played a little bit of keyboard. Maybe I could be a percussionist. And then a week later, and finally, summer came. I lived with my grandmother at the time. I went to visit my mother. And when I came back from visiting my mother, there was this coffin-shaped case in the living room with a stack of method books and the music for the upcoming year's marching band show. It says, if you want to be in band, you will play this instrument. And I opened it up, and it was a big bell front euphonium baritone thingy. Right. And probably so my first day in band was band camp. Yeah, it was. It wasn't old. Yeah. So, my very first day of band was the first day of band camp.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'd figured out all the fingerings. I thought the fingering charts were stupid. I don't need that. I understand whole steps and half steps because I played guitar. And I found somewhere in there where all the open notes were. It's like, oh, okay. So if I want to play a D in the middle of the bass clef, that's a step and a half below an F. So that's third valve. That's a step and a half. So I show up to camp doing all the fingerings wrong.
You thought you had the cheat codes.
Yeah, I'd figured it out. I already knew what was going on. I don't need this stuff. Take this method book away from me. Yeah, it was quite an experience. But by the time I was a sophomore, I had made it into All State East. And
Wait,
by the
hold up. You went from guitar player to joining band on the first day of band camp to making All-State East your sophomore year?
Yeah, well, let me
Is that what
qualify
you-
that statement.
Is that what you just said? I want to make sure
Yeah.
that's the trajectory we're talking about.
That's what I just said. But you think about it. 4 bands at that time. Each band had 6 euphonium players in it.
Don't do this. No. That's an incredible feat. You know it. I know it. Everybody listening to this knows it. So just accept my toast to you, sir.
Thank you.
I mean, I was just thinking about this. What a joy to have in class you must have been. And also, what a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
I think I can figure this note with my third valve, my left pinky, and my right eyebrow. I think I can get the note to come out. I can just see you being that kid, like, having a solution to all the problems that don't exist yet.
Yeah, that was me. And so when I've always had a soft place in my heart for when I've had that kid and they annoy me to death. And I just have to stop and think, wait a minute, this is payback. I get it.
Can you tell us about your job at the state?
Certainly. At this point right now, and many people listening will know that, the person in my role previously, Todd Shipley, left that position more than a year before I was hired. So there was kind of a backlog of stuff building up, just to kind of give a little bit of perspective. I am part of the academic team. Okay. So these are the people who manage standards, who work on alignment, who look at textbooks. They're on the whole, like wheels on the road end of things. They're the ones creating documents for math teachers and ELA teachers that get posted on the state websites all the time. They design the trainings that those people do, and they're really an amazing crew that I get to work with. On my part of the academic team, there are 6 people, including myself. My supervisor and 3 others are the math team. Those 4 people run the academic end of math for the entire state, which is an amazing feat, considering how much emphasis we put there. The 5th person on the team is the one science person who covers the entire state. And so his role and mine are very similar. We're both K through 12. We both have multiple disciplines to cover. And he is currently getting ready to roll out new standards. We are behind in that process because of that year's hiatus in there. So when I was hired on, there's immediate, sort of sigh of relief. It's like, now the rest of the team can stop managing the standards revision process. And that has been the bulk of my work for the first month, aside from just learning how everything works and onboarding and things like that, looking at the revisions that were done in the spring by a team of people from all across Tennessee to all of our standards, and going back and basically just figuring out, what was it that they were trying to get done? What were their intentions? I spent a lot of time talking with team members, the revision team members, to get a more in-depth idea of where they were going. So like I can read the document, I can see the changes they made. They even made notes about why they wanted to make changes. And sometimes it's just as minor as, this word confuses a lot of people. Is there a better way to say this? That sort of thing. But I wanted to make sure that I understood their intent before saying, yes, here we are, let's move on. There's a lot of long days of eyeballs bleeding, staring at a screen, trying to figure out, there's too many commas in that sentence, that sort of thing. Which it gives me a lot of feeling of disconnect right now, because that is, to a certain extent, very disconnected from where I was a year ago. Trying to get a pet band ready to go for football teams,
Right.
football games. But it's also given me a lot of insight into, our standards are designed so that there's similarity from discipline to discipline. We all work on the same artistic processes, that we perform, present, or produce art. We all create art. We all respond to art, and we connect to
Mm-hmm.
the other disciplines. And I think one of the things we kind of overlook, a lot of teachers overlook, I know I did in the classroom, is how we connect to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes we get these big grandiose ideas of, I'm going to talk about math when I'm talking about time signatures. I'm going to talk about, you know, grammar when I'm talking about how rhythms are laid out or whatever. And, okay, you can always get to that level, and your kids sometimes start to nod off, and you have to be careful with it. But, um, you know, between the arts disciplines, you can't have dance without music.
Mm-hmm.
You really can't deal with a whole lot of, visual format without, having gone through the act of creating something. I mean, there's so much that we do that is the same, and so much that we do that is built off of each other. If you just look at theater, and especially when you get into, opera or just musical theater, and you're looking at all of it,
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing
It's
the
all
the
there.
work of the work of a composer, the work of an ensemble, an actor. There could be dance going on, the people who design the sets, and it's visual, it's everything.
Yep.
uh, and it's beautiful that we have that, and unfortunate that maybe we don't leverage that into our standards as much as we could.
Well, I think I want to ask you about standards in a second, but it's just
Okay.
everybody's so nose to the grindstone. That's the element of teaching. That's
Yeah.
to be good, you have to really be nose to the grindstone. But that's also a flaw because then you're missing all the things that are happening around you, and maybe opportunities to connect. So I want to ask you about standards first.
Okay.
I have been that cynical teacher. I've been on both sides of this a little bit. I've been that cynical teacher that doesn't want to hear about unpacking standards. And I've also had to unpack standards when I was doing some fine arts administration in Williamson County. So, talk about how standards can be leveraged by teachers in our state in order to get support for their programs.
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head right there. The standards are how we rationalize the things we do. This is, if you ever have an admin come to you and questions the things that you're doing in your classroom, if you're teaching to the standards, they can't question it, nor should they. And in fact, I think most of the time when that happens, it's simply out of a lack of knowledge, and that's your opportunity to educate. When someone, let's say that it's a band room, and an admin walks in and says, "I haven't heard these kids play a tune yet. All they're doing is playing these notes up and down and up and down and up and down." Let's go over here and look at perform two.
Yeah. Yep.
That's what we do. Or someone walks into your classroom and says they're not playing. You're just talking about the composer and this writer that he hung out with. I was like, yeah, well, let's walk over here and look at our Connect standards. Um, I, you can use your standards to advocate for what you do in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is very rare that we can find a valid activity. Matter of fact, I haven't yet found a valid classroom activity that's not somewhere covered in those standards, especially if you are a new teacher, young teacher, still getting your legs under you. You need to have some guidance, because we base uh, our classroom plans off of our personal experiences. When we were in that elementary, middle school, high school classroom, we base that off of the experiences that we had in whatever preparatory program we went through, and those experiences kind of get foggy over
Mm-hmm.
time.
We teach
You
how
know,
we're taught.
we
Yep.
Yeah, and we only tend to remember, the things that really stuck out at the moment. I can't remember spending a whole lot of time uh, counting rhythms out loud when I was in band, but I know we did. I just,
Hmm.
but having some guide there to tell you that, yeah, this is an important thing to do. And I shouldn't just, completely put that on the shoulders of the young teacher, because sometimes it's a person like me who's been teaching for 20 some years. And, as I've in this last month, as I've just been pouring through these things, I find myself looking at different aspects of those standards that maybe I haven't really looked at in a while and going, man, that was missed opportunity.
I think, first of all, I think as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking this could be another episode completely, especially for how to help young teachers. It could be. I think we could do a whole podcast episode on young teachers using standards as they communicate with principals and
Yes.
administrators. Like that's a
How do you
that's
use these standards
yeah.
to your advantage?
Yes. Yeah. I think that could be another episode. I'm just thinking about tools they need. And then two other things. One, I remember going into a fine arts meeting, or I remember going into a curriculum department meeting in Williamson County. And whenever we had one of these meetings, then one of the curriculum specialists or me were unpacking a standard for everybody. So we could all go through the exercise and all that. And so it was my turn. Arts came up. And as I'm passing out some materials, I heard this. I heard this. She's a very nice lady, but I heard this woman say, "I didn't know they had standards."
Ding. Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, you're in for a treat because here's what we do." And and I showed her what a typical like a music rehearsal would be. We're not doing one standard; we're doing 11 of them at the same time, and
Absolutely.
it makes scope and sequence for us a little tricky. So I was trying to shift us to rather than scope and sequence so much as more like a pie chart that you're doing this group of standards in August, you're doing this, this percentage of your class is based on sort of what the time of the year is and what you need to do. And then I left and became a band director again. So, but it is an interesting thing that I think people tend to overlook, and we can maybe we can do some things to make it more relevant. Here's my question:
Yeah.
you're not really communicating with teachers in your role, right? You're communicating with district uh, curriculum admin. Is that right? Is that how you sort of it trickles through the pipelines?
Yeah, the mantra and the way the department has functioned over the years has shifted, but the current mantra is that the most effective way for our very small staff to support teachers is by instead supporting districts who in turn can
Hmm.
support their teachers. So, yeah, that is actually a question that I was asked in my interview that I thought was very interesting. I won't go into the details of it, but the gist of it was you're used to being able to reach out and help this one particular teacher and see outcomes from that. How are you going to deal with not being able to do that and instead having to work on a broader scale? And it that was,
That's a good
you
question.
know, that was very insightful because I had no idea that that's exactly the shift I was going through. Um, it it is a little difficult for me to not be able to see those individual outcomes, but okay, what I can do to compensate for that for me personally and hopefully to the benefit of schools around the state is simply to spend time in those schools looking at exemplars, and whether that be, an individual teacher who's just really rocking it in the classroom, or a program, like a full blown theater program, band
Hmm.
program, orchestra program, and how it works across multiple grade levels, or even, and this is something I'm very excited about, visiting districts that are innovating uh, in how they support their arts teachers. Maybe there's not one particular thing in this district yet that's absolutely blowing it up, but you can see at the district level, they've hired a person to speak for these people and to make sure, to take care of the care and feeding of those programs, which is, as that's a lot of the gig. I By being able to highlight those exemplars and say, this is where things are going well, because I think in my former position as an arts coordinator, one of the most effective things I could do was to make a person feel seen, to make them feel understood, to make them feel appreciated, and then by either through use of district social media or whatever, make it clear that they're
Hmm.
appreciated.
Yep.
That solves a lot of problems right there because we live on islands. Uh, I think back to that high school band director who was the one band director across his multiple schools. He didn't have a community in any one of those schools, and that's the truth for so many of us.
Yes.
Uh, but if we can feel like we're part of a larger community simply because someone showed up and took some pictures and you know said some nice things to you and listened to your problems and made note of those problems and said, let's try to figure something out. I don't know what I can do, but let's work on it together. I'm
Yeah.
hoping that can be a positive.
I think it will be. I'm just thinking about, again, the young teacher that's out in the hinterlands that sees an icon like an exemplar like you describe and thinks, I want that. How do I get to that thing? Then we're at least creating proof that that exists. That there
Yeah,
is a possibility for them to be able to create something, and then we can help them with the pathway to how to get there. And that's my next question too for you is, you're communicating mostly with districts, and some districts, larger districts, have a fine arts coordinator or director. What about the districts that don't? What's the lines of communication between your office and a small county system where there's not a curriculum specialist for arts?
this is a project for this year. Um, what everybody in the academic division needs is to know who those contacts are for their discipline. So when I talk with my science coworker, when I talk with my math coworkers, um, they all have various means of facilitating that. One of the big sad things, one of the big unfortunate things, is that there's not a bat phone
Hmm.
at TDOE. I can't shine a light in the sky and get the attention of every arts teacher in the state. And when you really think about it, that's not what the job's supposed to be, because you as a band director, you're responsible to your principal. That's your boss, and your boss is responsible to the district. And then there's various leadership at the district level, and so it shouldn't be me directly, communicating to visual art teacher, you know, somewhere out on the border with Kentucky or whatever, and here's what should be going on in your classroom. Uh, but as you allude to, there has to be someone in the district whose responsibility that person is. And I can't really say a whole lot about it right now because we're in the planning phases,
Right.
but there's a project that's being prepared to identify those contacts.
I think
Who,
that's the important part right there. Is it may not exist, but it's going to.
yes, yeah. And I think there's a very strong understanding at the department that creating those networks is the key. Uh, we can post stuff on websites all day long. If no one knows to look at it,
Yep.
it's invisible. But if I know, Miss So and So in such and such county, she's the one to go to talk about what's going on with the theater program there. Well, here's a series of trainings coming up that I can give you, dates and locations for, and this would be perfect for your theater person because I know
Mm.
that the one theater person in that district uh, isn't really getting a whole lot out of sitting in a PLC with all the math teachers.
Hmm. Yep.
You
Looking at
it's
quintiles.
yeah, I mean, the effort is nice and the community is great. Simply having someone to talk to in your district's great, but how are you going to learn about your craft?
Yeah.
How are you going to sharpen your tools if there's
Well,
no one there that knows what they are?
and I don't know how much this is being accessed, but with technology as it is and the ease of jumping on a Zoom or a Teams meeting, it seems like there's potential there to create community for those singleton teachers outside of
Oh,
their own district.
definitely.
And I hope we're doing that. And if we're not, then maybe we can figure out a way to sort of facilitate something like that. What is your vision for what this position of yours is going to become and how it can serve teachers in Tennessee?
The networking bit is probably the most powerful thing. Um, Keeping the conversation about arts education going at TDOE is also another very important bit. Um, right now, there's not a great deal of content on any of the TDOE websites. Whether you go just look at the main website and you've Googled art standards, okay, and it'll take you there, and there it is, and there's a PDF document you can download, but there's no guidance, and that's, if I can get that conversation really rolling at the department and get people interested, not just at the department, but in our, you know, communities, our teacher communities, like what would be helpful if we were going to post stuff here, what would you like to see posted? And those are the kinds of conversations I want to have around the state as I go and visit programs, and when I talk to people in the business that I am invariably going to talk to on a regular basis.
So the landscape is changing for a lot of our band programs right now. New legislation impacting rescheduling and shuffling of middle school schedules. And you mentioned you're a band director that taught 1 day a week. What is the balance between our routine and being adaptable?
Oh, we're talking band director questions now.
It's a band podcast, Atticus.
I will say that I was very fortunate over the last nearly 10 years that the schedule I taught was very static. I had admin that were fully invested in maintaining what was going on, not just in my band room, but in all of the arts classrooms in both the middle schools I taught at. That's not to say that there aren't pressures and that things change. We have a new program that we're going to use to pull struggling students out and work with them, or we have this new mandate about what classes should be offered and how are we going to do that. And I'm going to try to keep the band director hat on for a second. There's a certain degree of you roll with the punches and you keep doing what you do. I can't think of a single day in my time at Tullahoma that I didn't come back to the fundamentals of, hey, if we've got a few minutes, we're going to play. And so my kids just rolled with that. Okay, there's something that's getting in the way today, program or something. Well, are we going to need to get our horns out? I said, well, we got 10 minutes, and here we go. Let's play. It's because of what we love to do. But things happen, and maybe your responsibilities get shifted. Maybe the time you have with your kids in your classroom gets changed. I can remember one day that I went up to one of my very first principals and gave her a giant hug because she had accidentally made my band classes 5 minutes longer. She didn't mean to do that. She was trying to give a little bit more planning time to all the other teachers by making my classes a little bit longer.
Bonus 5 minutes. You could do a lot in 5 minutes over the course of a year.
25 minutes a week.
Yes.
I was picking up an extra class period every 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's it
great.
right there.
But I went up to her and I hugged her and I said, "You've done such a wonderful thing for the band program." I did. Yeah. We need every minute we can get. And I promise you, we will use every single one of those minutes. And that kind of set the tone for that relationship, Once again, I think lots of times when things happen to our programs, very often it is due to a lack of visibility. And so, I would have, Christmas time rolls around, we got a parade tune memorized. You better believe we're going to walk up to the office and get right in the principal's face.
We used to do that stuff too.
Hey,
impromptu concert in the Commons. Let's go. Yeah.
Gather around. Here we go. And of course you talk to all the teachers first and make sure they're not going to be given a test or something. Or
oh, that's what I was doing wrong.
Yeah. You do it on the last day when no one's doing anything else. Yeah.
Okay, so
Oh my gosh.
so Stephen Coleman, of course, everybody is doing such great work with Arts Ed Tennessee, and Stephen's going to come on and probably do a series with us. And what you're talking about here, Atticus, is about arts teachers. This is the thing about getting your nose off the grindstone, is working to develop relationships in your community, not just your boosters, but people in the community, to build an arts advocacy group in your community, so that so rather than being reactive, that things are always happening to us, now we're beginning to happen to things. That
Yes.
we have leaders in our communities, folks that are on the Chamber of Commerce, the minister at the Baptist Church, the owner of the Ford dealership. Those folks are involved in a group that can begin to advocate for arts and have influence over local leaders in education and even state legislators, so that we begin to have a grassroots support for the arts. So I'm excited about that conversation with Stephen that's coming up. And you want to add anything to that? I know you and Stephen have had these conversations a million times in the past.
Yeah. For many years over lunch. Um, the the reality of my job as it starts to sink in versus my perception of that job, when I was in the classroom is very different. I was always under the impression that TDOE was constantly the driver behind much of that, legislation or movements in education that we felt like, quote unquote, happened to us. And we're not. We're very much on the opposite end of it. We're on the, okay, let's find a way to make this work. How do we implement things? How do we get information out? And our lawmakers do things in good conscience
Mm-hmm.
with the intent of making things better for the people they represent. I've never met a lawmaker that was not the case. The trick is, if you aren't aware of what's coming down the pike ahead of time, you never have the opportunity to have maybe a direct conversation with that lawmaker if the opportunity presents itself, to have a conversation with someone who could have a conversation with that lawmaker if the opportunity presents itself. You never have the opportunity to have a discussion at all. You suddenly feel like you're no longer at the table, you're on the menu. And
That's a new one. I'm stealing that.
I love that one. That's one of my favorite ones.
That's really good.
And that's why being visible is so important too.
Yeah.
Because if no one knows you're there, this is a resource that we no longer need. I think what Stephen and Arts Ed Tennessee is doing is so incredibly valuable to education in general, not just arts education. I think this is a model that all education should be involved with. They're not pushing for one particular thing or another. They're not necessarily advocating specifically for one position or another. What they're doing is simply trying to make people aware of what's going on at the legislative level, and it's mind-boggling the number of bills that are proposed each year in relation to just education, and very often they have unintended consequences. I mean, just like with anything, when you walk into the band room and you decide you want to teach dotted 8/16 a different way today because you think it's going to work better, and then 4 years down the road you got a senior who always is kind of doing things wonky, and you're like, I know why that happened, because I taught it that way 4 years ago. Being aware ahead of time of things, and giving yourself the opportunity to be proactive is so important. Uh, and I think that the community building that Stephen is doing is of the utmost value to us in general.
Yep. What would you say to young teachers, Atticus? Brand new baby teachers.
Well, I can tell you exactly what I'm going to say because my daughter is in her last year at UTK. Hopefully, a year from now, she will be gainfully employed. She wants very badly to be a middle school band director, and I think she'll be a very good one. But there are things she needs to do. She needs to be a member of her professional organization in whatever community she ends up teaching in. Uh, think about how much you learned. I think about how much I learned just from being in the same room with people who had done it for decades.
100%.
And sometimes you learn the things you don't want to do. It's like, yeah,
Yep.
I can't do what they're doing, and I'm not. That's not my personality. I can't roll that way. So maybe my program shouldn't work in that direction. Maybe there's another model to look for, and you're in the room with all those people who have all these different models of how to do things. I think that she needs to be very proactive about knowing what's going on in the community that she teaches in. She needs to know who the prime movers are. She will need to establish solid relationships with her admin early.
Mm-hmm.
Be that person who is reliable. Be that person who asks questions. Be that person who shows up on time when other people don't.
Yes, and be the person that goes and gives your administrator a hug for 5 minutes extra in class every day. I mean, seriously, like that came up in, we did an episode last spring with a couple of admins and just about getting along in school. And you don't want to be that teacher that's just goes to your administrator with problems for them to solve.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you want to walk in and say, "Hey, this little freshman learned how to play the fight song today. Just wanted you to know. See you later. Bye." And you're dropping little nuggets of good news on them because look, that job is not something I want. I wouldn't want to be
No.
a principal. That's,
No,
so having
principals, they work hard.
yes, and being seen as that person who is positive in the school by your administrator. Yeah, exactly. Being early. Go say hello to your principal at 4:30 in the afternoon when they're still in their office going through their paperwork. Ask them
Yep.
how their day was. That goes a
Just
long way.
just walking through here to check my mail before I head home.
Yeah, I hope you're
And
doing okay. Let me know if I can do anything for you. Yep.
see you tomorrow.
Yep.
I think that getting involved at the state level is also a thing to think about. I mean, I think you spend a few years with your professional organization at your local level. You take advantage of the opportunities that they have for you and for your students, and don't get frustrated if things don't just go great guns right off the bat, because I guarantee you, for nobody else in that room did it happen right off the bat. And then, one of my current regrets is that uh, I never pushed myself beyond the regional level. My relationship with TMEA is one of, I'm good friends with a lot of people who are really big in TMEA, but I don't have that common experience of having had to chair an ensemble, of having to manage rehearsal space and equipment, uh, or having to allocate space for sessions,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that uh, I I let myself down right there. If I could change one thing about what I've done in the past few years, it would be that.
Atticus, I'm
Uh,
sure that if you volunteered to do equipment for a Team EA for next year, they would accept your your proposal. So it's not too
wow.
late. I'll just let Michael
Yeah.
Chester know right now.
Yeah. We're going to delete this a little bit right here. Let me put it let me give you an opposite example of that. And this is one of the reasons why I do regret this. When I became the arts coordinator in Tullahoma, I felt the urgency to gain as much street cred with all the other disciplines as I possibly could. Uh, you know, it's really easy for people to look at you and say, "Oh, Mr. Band Director, the
Mm-hmm.
band's going to run everything now, yeah, and you guys are going to get all the resources, and you guys are going to go." No, no. In fact, I just joined your organization, and I did. I went ahead and I joined TAEA as the first opportunity I had, and you know, by the time I left that position, I was actually part of their executive committee
Mm.
as an administrative representative, and was learning so much about what those art teachers value and what they need. And, the care and feeding of became a whole lot easier for me.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to their conference and you sit down with them, uh, and just listen.
Yep.
It's incredible.
What would you say to folks that are in really challenging environments? Urban schools, urban teachers, and of course, now with my new TMEA position, rural teachers.
What I wish I could say is reach out. But unless they're listening to this podcast, that doesn't do it doesn't do a whole lot of good. Um, we, and when I say we, I mean myself at TDOE. I mean our professional organizations in the state, TMEA in specific in this case. We need to know what your challenges are and what value we can provide
Mm.
to you. And it's going to be, vastly different. I know you and I have talked about this briefly. Nola Jones and I have talked about this because she's the urban chair
Yep.
for TMEA, and the conversations were very different. Uh, it's so easy to identify who those educators are in those urban settings because we can just draw a circle on the map and go to district website and start looking at individual schools, and boom, there we go. The challenge you have as the rural chair is so much different.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no circle on the map to draw.
No.
It is the map.
It's much more nebulous.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you might drop a pin in the map and happen to have dropped it on top of a wonderful little school system that's doing all the right things, and then you drop it 10 miles to the east or 10 miles to the north, and there's nothing going on at all, and there's someone who needs help. What I would say to all those people is we need to know who you are, we need to know what you need, and your professional organization needs to know how it can best lift you.
Mm.
It may be that situation for a rural school system where they are physically so far away from a state conference that being there is unmanageable. Okay, maybe there's something that can be done for those people. If you
Yes.
are in an urban setting and the financial responsibility of getting kids to a conference, of getting them to, even the regional ensemble is so great that how can we help with that? Is there a way to help with that? And unless we have those conversations, we'll never know, and those people will remain invisible. And once again, you're not at the table.
So, Atticus, if people need to get in touch with you to sort of help build their network, what is your best contact information?
Easiest way to get me is via email because I'm sitting in front of it about 7.5 hours every day.
Your
and
email
it
has its
chirps at
own.
me. It goes, bang, you got
Yeah,
an email.
I bet your email has its own monitor.
Yeah. Sometimes I wish it didn't. Atticus, Atticus Hensley, Hensley @tn.gov, gov. There's not a whole lot I can do on an individual basis, and then once, as we spoke about earlier, that's not my remit. However, um, part of what I want to be able to do is connect people with people who can help. So let's say that you are a band director off on the edge of nowhere, and you don't know who to reach out to. Reach out to me. I'll get you in touch with the right person. I'll help you find where help can be found.
Mm-hmm.
You need a mentor. I don't know anybody else that teaches in your area probably, but I know people who do.
I'm thinking about all these new middle school schedules that are happening, and there have to be exemplars out there for districts that have figured it out that allow their band programs to flourish. And the more we can share that information, then the better we're going to be. Atticus, this has been great. I'm so excited that you were on this podcast, and I can't wait for you to come back. It's been really fun. Any final words?
I want to do the whole standards thing. I want to talk standards for about an hour because I am a nerd.
Okay. 7 people are excited about that sentence right now. So your task will be to make standards something that's fantastic. So
everybody's gonna be talking standards. It's all about me. That's me. That's my mission.
Yeah, right now, here's my standard. Try to get the fight song to not fall apart
Yes.
Friday night. That's my standard right now.
Yeah. That's perform 2.
Yeah, fit all these trombone players in beginning band with the right instrument, right? That's my standard right now.
Yes. The grindstone hits hard.
It does. All right, Atticus, thank you so much. It's been wonderful. And I just want to say to everybody out there, we're in good hands. I love Todd Shipley. Todd did a great job. I'm excited about his new role. And I think Atticus is going to be fantastic for us and do so many really, really good things. So congratulations on your job, Atticus. And
thanks so much, David.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing all the great things you're going to do.
All right, let's be in touch.
Thanks for listening to Bandstand. Bandstand's mission is to build a stronger, more unified band community in Tennessee by fostering meaningful conversations about the past, present, and future of school bands in our state. If you have topic suggestions or need to get in touch with us, email us at tbabandstandpodcast@gmail.com. Your input is important to us, and if you have a topic you'd like to discuss about the past, present, or future of Tennessee bands, please let us know. Again, that email is tbabandstandpodcast@gmail.com. Right now, we're broadcasting on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts, so please subscribe, review, and rate Box 5, please. And if you find something interesting or helpful, please share this podcast with your friends. Bandstand is proud to be sponsored by Music for All and Romeo Music. See you next week.